Hey there, Sterile Processing Universe. My name's Hank Balch, and you are watching and listening to another episode of Driving Dirty. It's a 5-day beta test of a new style of content to the Beyond Clean channel, live streaming 5 days a week, kind of during drive time or break time, depending on where you are in the great United States of America, or potentially tuning in across the world. I know we've had some comments from the Aussies down under saying, "Hey, is this going to be recorded?" Because it's kind of the middle of the night for us. So yeah, don't worry if you can't catch us live. You can always catch the show afterwards on demand. So again, my name's Hank. Just a little intro in case this is the first touch you've had with Beyond Clean, or maybe even the sterile processing industry as it is. I know we get a lot of new. Um, we get a lot of new technicians, but also potential folks that are looking to apply to this role in healthcare. And you're just kind of Googling around out there, as we discussed yesterday. Maybe you're looking around on YouTube, searching for content to try to figure out what is this crazy thing called sterile processing. And who is this guy with the beard talking to me about it today? So, just to orient you real quick on who I am, then we'll talk about what sterile processing is real briefly for the newbies, and then we'll jump into the show today. We're going to be talking about a number of different things, everything from competencies to elevator etiquette. And of course, if we get any live comments or questions throughout the show, we'll try to tackle those on the fly as well. But the date today, time date, we are November 19th. It's currently 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm broadcasting out of my studio in College Station, Texas. All right. So again, my name's Hank. I started in the sterile processing industry myself in 2009. I'm one of a lot of us that got into this career not with any intentionality, quite frankly. I wasn't looking to become a sterile processing professional when I was in high school or when I went to college. There was no degree program that I specifically chose to say, I want to reprocess surgical instruments. And so, like a lot of folks, I was just out there living life, working different jobs, doing school. Actually, I was in grad school at the time that I got my first sterile processing job. And as the stories go, there's a million different kinds of how you get into this industry type story. My story was I was working at Walmart and I was a second shift stalker, not stalker. I was not stalking. I was stocking the truck. So they'd bring the truck kind of in the afternoon with all of the groceries, and I would unload. I was forklift certified. Yeah, baby. Speaking of certification and its competencies, we're going to tackle that again, as I said here later. Anyways, I did that and kind of got the shelves all stocked over second shift into the evening, and I had a buddy that was working there with me. I want to say he was in the bakery or the deli or something like that. And he actually went to school with me at the same school, and he helped a guy move. It was in one of his classes one weekend, and that guy said, "Hey, I'm hiring at this department in the hospital. Would you be interested in coming on?" And so my buddy got a job. And then after he told me and he left, he reached out a couple weeks later and said, "Hey, would you be interested in a job at the hospital too, Hank?" And I said, "Take me with you." Yeah, please, let's go. Let's go. I'd love to do that. It was nice because it was there was shift work. So as I said, I was already working second shift at the store, and they were hiring for first, second, and third shift at the hospital. So I picked up on the second shift, got the job. And again, I walked in not really knowing what I was walking into. I had this general idea, and it had something to do with surgery, with instruments. I knew that I got to wear scrubs. I got to kind of go behind the scenes of the hospital. It felt more professional. So I won't say it is more professional, but grocery store, like food business, agriculture, it is a professional industry. There's a ton of growth opportunity. Just one little caveat: even way back in 2009, I knew, and it was well known at that time, that directors at your Walmart were making um, over, they were making six figures. They make $100,000 a year just directing like these various Walmart stores, right? So 100, 120, 150, I think was maybe closer to the real number back then for the director of these stores. Now they're dealing with millions of dollars of inventory. They're dealing with all kinds of, uh, like they're really kind of running a small business, if you will, in each one of those locations. So there is growth, there is professionality in every industry. Healthcare is not the only one, it's not the best one. Yes, we have a high calling because we're caring for patients, but I don't like the conversations when we kind of compare ourselves to other industries. Uh, like a real common one that you hear out there is, "Hey, we're not flipping burgers in sterile processing," and I understand the comparison and the analogy, but it it irritates me a little bit because we do to the food service industry what we don't want people to do to us is we kind of degrade their mission or their profession in a way to make us feel more important or to feel better, and that's not fair. It's not true. A lot of fantastic folks are out there working in food service and they're keeping you and me and our family safe. You could die just as easily if there's someone not paying attention to best practices in the food service industry as you can if we're not doing everything that we need to do in the sterile processing industry. And so that's just one comparison, right? I'm getting off track here a little bit of my story, but I think that's important to call out. The same is true since we're off track. Let me just finish this thought. The same is true um, when we push back against that phrase. Maybe 10, 20 years ago is maybe a little bit more common that sterile processing, they're just a bunch of dishwashers. Okay, so th- that that phrase itself is problematic because we know they're trying to put sterile processing down, but then at the same time, when sterile processing responds to that and we say, no, we're not dishwashers, and we're kind of saying it with the same level of disdain and comparison that that first group is. And y'all, I mean, stop and think a second. There are dishwashers in your hospital today. If your hospital does any kind of food service, which if you're doing any kind of overnight, they are, you got folks that their job title may not be dishwasher, but that's their role. They're washing dishes. They're a member of the hospital, the healthcare team, and they are out there, just like I said, they're saving lives. They're a part of this care team that we all claim to be on. And I think we need to be real careful and thoughtful on both sides of the coin. Not say, hey, there's this pyramid or there's this ladder and there's all these people at the bottom, and these are the people that are not as important as we are because we're a little higher on this ladder. We don't like when people do that to us in sterile processing. We sure as heck should not be doing it to any other members of the care team. So check yourself, check others. I'm not going to be like running around with a little clipboard, and then every time someone says something about dishwashers derogatorily, I'm going to come in the comment section. I'm going to kind of burn you. That's not what I'm talking about. But I do think that we need to be transparent and honest with each other to say there is not this kind of echelon of quality and value within healthcare. We all are playing different roles, just like the body, right? We're all different parts of the body. We got hands on the body, we got feet on the body, we got heart, we got liver, we got brain, right? But we need all those to function correctly. And they all do different things, but they're all part of this one mission. In the case of the body, to survive. Same thing within the healthcare. We're all part of the same team. Okay. So what I was saying is I came over from that grocery store sector from Walmart, started in 2009, walked in off the street. This is still common today. I think most people know this on the inside of the industry, but if you haven't worked in sterile processing, you may not understand the dynamics of hiring in. Like, what are those prerequisites before you get into the department? Well, um, with the exception of only a few states, I think we're maybe up to five, maybe six states today. So there's 50 states last time I checked. So the vast majority of states today have no legal requirement to be certified prior to starting sterile processing. So we only got a couple states out there. I've got strong opinions about the certification conversation. If anybody's interested, we can we can talk about that. Hey, Chris, thank you. I love when people agree with me. Thank you very much. I also love when people disagree with me. So if you got disagreements that you want to throw into the chat, by all means, go ahead. But I'm going to be watching the comment section today, by the way. Um, because this is a drive time show, if you're commuting, I didn't mention this yesterday on episode 1, but if you're commuting today, there's a lot of ways that people get to work. It's not just driving, and there's a lot of distance that people drive into their sterile processing jobs. You might be surprised to hear some of these, but I've talked to folks, especially out in California, that have an hour and a half commute both ways. Right, so 3 hour total drive time, depending on traffic that they're coming into their sterile processing. So that is a lot of drive time. That's a lot of time. There's a lot of things to do on that drive, but you can call family, call loved ones, call friends. You can tune in to your favorite radio station. You can catch up on audiobooks. You can listen to the Beyond Clean podcast. And now, even depending on what time you're driving, coming in or going home, you can check out this Driving Dirty on the Beyond Clean network, at least this week as we test this model out. But yeah, besides driving, there's all kinds of folks that take public transit. So you got folks that are coming in on the bus. Really easy to listen to podcasts in that dynamic. You can even watch because you're not driving the bus, you're riding. Same thing with trains or metros. Um, if you're biking to work, I would not advise you watching this, but I would encourage you to turn it on and listen to it as you're biking, maybe on low levels, because as you're biking, I'm not a biker, so I'm just kind of talking off the cuff here, but I'm assuming that you kind of need to hear what's going on around you. So if you are listening and you're biking low level, that way you can kind of hear cars coming up behind you. You can hear horns honking, and like you can just kind of get the nuance of what's going on, so that um, you're not injured on the way to work. Okay, so we'll say that way. Same thing if you're driving. Please try not to watch this, but you can listen. And depending on the subscription that you have on your YouTube, I think you can just turn your YouTube on and then actually you can lock your phone and still hear the audio. All right. Anywho, got into sterile processing back 2009. Didn't really know what I was walking into. And again, I had no prerequisites, which is really, really common. Still common today. Lots of folks. And I would maybe even wager to say the majority of the folks who are still hired today into sterile processing have no prereqs. They're not graduating from schools. They're not coming in with any kind of certification. There was no prep program or anything that they took. They just see the job posting and they happen to meet the basic requirements, which is typically like a high school diploma or a GED and a pulse, right? That's the basics. That's the fundamental. That's what it is. And I met those qualifications way back in 2009, and I didn't have any other healthcare background, really limited science background. Um, my undergrad was in agriculture, and I was in grad school doing a theology degree, so nothing even closely related to anything healthcare. Um, and yeah, got hired on. In those early days of sterile processing was really a culture shock in a lot of ways, beyond just the job itself, like the cleaning and all all the debris and stuff. Like I was never a big kind of blood and guts guy. I did not like gory movies. I didn't like the sight of blood. And then I got this job where, especially in the decontamination area, you're seeing a whole lot of that. Uh, Thankfully, for anybody who maybe feels that way too, you do get used to it. I won't say, like, depending on who you are, like that kind of queasiness or whatever, that may never completely go away, but you just kind of get in this mindset of, I'm in this job, I got my PPE on. It's not like you're up close and personal with just your hands and you get all this stuff like in your face or whatever. No, like you've got protective equipment on, you got gloves, you got face shield, you got mask, you got gowns. There's a lot of separation there from anything that may gross you out. Um, at this stage, so I'm going to kind of pause here because I'm going to pick up, not my journey, but I'm going to pick up the competency journey here in a bit on this live stream because I want to talk about the challenge of getting us from that place of completely no background, hired them off the street, to a place of safety and quality in this role. Because obviously, this is a critical, it's a critical role in the cycle of surgical services that some people, because it's a cycle, you can kind of start wherever you want to in that circle and then go around. But some people say it starts in sterile processing because this is where the instrumentation begins its reprocessing cycle. Then we get it ready for surgery. Obviously, that's where the patient comes in contact with our instruments and they're used. And then that cycle kind of starts again and comes back into the decontamination area. So we're going to pick that up here in a moment. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I see your reacts. And then Chris, I also see your comment here. I'll put this up. So Christopher says, I'm interested to hear about the certification qualifications to work in SPD because I heard the same question at an OR conference in a seminar and got a different answer. Maybe Delaware is a state that requires certifications ahead of time. Great question, Chris. And yeah, I guess if you ask that, I'll go ahead and answer that now. Why not? Off the top of my head, I guess I could, I almost said Google this, but I'm going to chat GPT this. How many states in the U.S. require sterile processing certification? So we'll see what chat GPT has to say with this. Now, there's a lot of AI models out there. If you follow me closely, you're probably aware of. I'm a huge AI fan. I think there's tons of potential out here. But ChatGPT is one of them that says, my cutoff for knowledge was October 2023. That's kind of one of the most recent updates they've had. So yeah, this is what ChatGPT says here, Chris. As of my knowledge cutoff in October 2023, 5 U.S. states require sterile processing technicians to obtain certification. Those states are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Tennessee, and Massachusetts. Okay. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Tennessee, and Massachusetts. So really interesting. Shout out to my buddy Sean Flynn. Hope you're watching here. Sean, love you, man. Sean, on this Tennessee. So if you're good at geography or if you're decent at geography, there's probably a theme here. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Okay. All those little things up there in New England. And you got this random southern state, Tennessee. Where the heck did Tennessee come from? Out of left field, right? It's not up there. Different culture, different politics, different strategies and priorities. And then you get this random Tennessee. Well, what happened in Tennessee? I mean, terrific story. And I think we've told some of this story before on the podcast with Sean, but it'd be great. Like, I just can't get enough of the background of that particular story. But a guy named Sean Flynn, he was in the military. He was a surgical tech in the military. And of course, if you're in the military and you do surgical tech, you also do sterile processing. You got to do it all in that role. He got out of the military, got into the civilian life within within healthcare, got into sterile processing leadership, became an entrepreneur in the sterile processing industry. That's still what he's doing today. Well, he saw this stuff happening. Like at that point, I think there was maybe one or two states, maybe three states at that point, but at least one or two. And it was taking forever, still taking forever. I mean, they've been working on the legislation across the country for as long as I've been in the industry and before that. So we're talking 2009. So was that 15 years now? They've been working on getting legislation passed. And um, and so Sean just kind of looked around and said, "Well, I know some I know some people in Tennessee. I know some folks that care about healthcare, and I think I've got some connections with some of the politicians out there to at least get a hearing." And he got to work, started making some phone calls, making some visits, and the guy, I mean, there's nothing that happens single-handedly within politics. You need other folks to come along to coalesce. You got to build um, those collaborations across the lines, like politicals who don't agree with what your political stance is, right? Um, but this guy put this thing together and got the legislation passed in Tennessee almost without anybody else knowing what's going on. He didn't have all this funding, all these dollars being thrown at it. He wasn't paying lobbyists. He was his own lobbyist in some sense. I don't know if he was technically a lobbyist. That kind of gets legal, so I don't want to put that out there. But um, he was making it happen because he cared about this industry and he was a sterile processing technician, and he didn't want to wait until it was Tennessee's turn to come up on the list to be targeted, because there's only so many resources, only so many people out there that can work on this. And God bless him, the guy got it done. So if you're ever familiar, like if you know Sean Flynn, or if you don't, track him down through LinkedIn. He's got a terrific story about this Tennessee legislation, and it, it ain't perfect. None of the current legislation out there is perfect within the sterile processing certification space. There's a lot of give and take. There's a whole lot of exceptions. That's what people don't. Um, I'd say on the inside and the outside, people don't realize how many exceptions there are, even in states that require certification. It's often not even you have to be certified before you get the role. It's many times you got to be certified within 12 months, 18 months, 24 months of getting the role, which I've always thought is kind of curious, because we're not saying that completely uncertified people can't care for our patients or our trays. We're just saying you can only care for them for 18 months, and then we're going to make you go get this certification. So 17 months in, you're fine, you're good. If you're still doing this in 18 months, you're illegal. You're no longer safe. I know. I think that's kind of out there. But again, I've got really unique perspectives on the sterile processing certification piece. I think there's whole lot of conversation, a lot of holes in it, and I am not quite about it. So if you've been listening or if you've been reading any of my content way back till 2012, basically was when I started talking about that. You know how I feel about it. But yeah, if you've got any other specific questions around that piece, Chris, hopefully that answers your question. All right, let's go into a quick weather update. This is drive time. We are live. I think somebody, I think it was David, yesterday, he mentioned that Tim Pool is like an in real life podcast. I don't know if any of you guys listen to him or watch him, but I don't. I just kind of looked him up a little bit to see what he does. But, he reads the news on his live stream. We got some time not to kill. We just got some time to fill. Okay. You're driving into work. Hopefully, if you're 30 minutes out, you're almost to work right now. So that's awesome. To go clock in, go start fighting dirty, get it done. If you're not, I'm going to give you a little update about what's going on around the country today. We're going to start with the Weather Channel. everyone's favorite, right? Okay, so current temperatures right now, November 19th, 2024, around the US, where I am, we're kind of 55 degrees or so right now down in Texas. Starting to get a little chilly. I wore my hoodie into work today. Okay. All of you northern folks, you're like, what is he talking? So we're talking Fahrenheit for all y'all internationals tuning in, right? So when I say degrees, we're talking Fahrenheit. It's not that hot. Okay, so on the West Coast, we're seeing 40s, got some lower 30s. If you go inland a little bit there from California, man, Nevada, northern Nevada right now is like 11 degrees. It's a little crazy. That looks like one of the coldest areas on the map right now, besides uh, looks like Wyoming's down to 14, kind of south there, and then northern Montana, 16 degrees. Okay, but it's warming up as we continue to go east here, warming up around the coast, obviously down there in Louisiana and the coast of Alabama, Mississippi, that little panhandle of Florida. We're seeing 70 degrees. How are y'all 70 degrees and it is the end of November? That's not fair. Speaking of not fair, it's 78 degrees in the very southern tip of Florida. That little boot down there in Miami, probably 78. That's a dream world. That's great. Um, and then going north into New England, these are all the states we mentioned to tie back in. The 4 of the 5 states that require certification in this role up in the New England area, and you guys are sitting around the 40s, up to Maine. Looks like you're currently 40 degrees right now. Going a little bit south here, Vermont, New Hampshire, it's looking in the mid 40s. So that's your update on the current temps. Are y'all enjoying this? Okay. I know I am. Okay. So, real quick, today's forecast on high temperatures, what we're going to see. So, I was talking all of that about the coast here, but in Texas, we're still potentially going to be seeing highs in the 80s today. Houston's going to see 80 degrees. So, it's going to warm up a little bit. I don't want to leave out our Midwest followers here. And depending on what you call Midwest, okay, you may come back and knock me on this, but we got to Kansas City is a high of 58 today, partly cloudy. Rapid City, we're seeing 42 degrees and windy. Same thing with Billings, Montana. That's 39 degrees and windy. And we're seeing some snow flurries. That's looking like, what is that, North Dakota? If you're tuning in from North Dakota, I know I got some North Dakota fans out there. Let me know if it's snowing already out there outside of your sterile processing department. Okay. That's your weather update today. I won't go in to the lows, but I will say it's looking like some rain on the eastern seaboard out there. So kind of from Georgia north into kind of West Virginia, but also like, North Carolina, South Carolina, that kind of stuff too, all the way up to what looks like New York. And then, of course, we got some snow in North Dakota, and it looks like some strips of snow from Washington and Oregon. Okay. We Oh, that's great. Yeah, Chris, you're getting the weather update. uh, Poor guy just got out of surgery and he tuned into the Beyond Clean podcast thinking he's going to be hearing something about sterile processing and he's getting the Weather Channel. I'm auditioning. You guys don't know this, but I'm auditioning for the new meteorologist job on the local news channel. So hopefully this stream is going to be my pilot that I send to them and say, hey, can I get that job? I can point very well. I got to practice pointing and not looking where I'm pointing or not looking at the screen so I know my states. But I'm telling you, my geography is pretty decent for having not really traveled the U.S. prior to being an adult. Like when I was a kid, all of our vacations were in Texas. Now, if you're not from Texas, to get out of Texas from where we are, kind of that central Texas, but it's kind of more southern central Texas, it can take you 7 hours to get to the border. So all you like little states where you're like, how can you have not gone to other states? Well, yeah, we drove 7 hours and we're still in Texas. That's how we could not get. All right. Yeah, Oklahoma City is not the Midwest as far as I'm concerned. Oklahoma in general, Chris, is not in the Midwest. Actually, this is Chris's question. Just if anyone else is tuning in, um, yeah, that's Southwest, brother. That is completely Southwest, 100%. You got plenty of dust, and you got tumbleweeds, and I mean, I don't know how you get more Southwest than that. So yeah, welcome to the South. I think Texas is an interesting state because it's kind of south, and like depending on the geography that you're in, E- East Texas looks and feels a lot more like Louisiana, like Alabama, like Mississippi. But if you go farther enough west, yeah, you, you can't tell the difference between New Mexico and kind of that panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas is just all kind of barren out there. So, um, yeah, we're right in the middle. But the farther north you go, you'll get a little bit more exposure to some green and some rain, and you got some taller grass. So, anywho, I got to get back on track, guys, or I'm going to lose y'all. Thank you for everybody who's hanging out because I see my numbers are holding steady, so that's great. All right, let me go here to elevator etiquette in sterile processing. There's a lot of things when I sit down as a sterile processing manager and director and kind of look at my team and say, what do they need to know to be excellent sterile processing techs? Not just a competent, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, competency, for the safety and quality of the job, but also competency to pass our accreditation exams. We want them to be all of those things, but also there's more. It's kind of like in high school when you're sitting down, you need to pass all your tests to graduate, or you need to pass your SAT to be able to get into college or whatever. Not just pass, I guess you got to get a certain score. Um, we all know I can pass the test and still not know everything that I could know or should know about the world or even about the topics that I'm being tested in. Like I can pass a math test and not know everything there is to know about math. Or I can pass a geography test and not know everything there is to know about geography. Well, we can pass sterile processing tests, even big, long tests, and still not know everything that we could know or should know or is important to know about sterile processing. So that's the competency piece. But there's another piece. It's kind of this excellence piece. So I would say um, you can have competent technicians who still are not excellent technicians or who um, uh, don't add in to as a department this culture of excellence that I'm going to be speaking to here in a second about the elevator etiquette. Um, and there's a lot of examples of this, right? Elevator etiquette is one. Communication strategies would be another one. How do we answer the phone as a department? That's kind of customer service is kind of that category. It's really hard to test and grade for customer service. It's one of those skills that's much more demonstrative than it is kind of book learning, knowledge learning. Yeah, like you can tell me this is what you should do when you answer the phone, but is that actually what you're doing? Why does it matter? And I want to speak to why does it matter on this elevator etiquette thing, then maybe you can apply it to some of these other soft skills. Yeah, David, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I was shouting you out earlier, David. You probably missed it with the Tim Pool podcast that you referenced, and I gave the weather update. So I don't know if you heard that or not. All right. Elevator etiquette. I actually wrote an article about elevator etiquette way back 2016, November 7, 2016. So what is that? 8 years ago. Crazy. And in that, I kind of reference two of these customer service heavy models, real common in the industry. They're actually still active today. So I wrote this back in 2016, but these are still one of the leading customer service categories. And it comes from Chick-fil-A is one, and Disney is the other. So I've never been to Disney World. I'm not as rich as all you guys out there who can afford to go, or maybe I just don't max out my credit cards as much. I don't know. Either one. You can let me know which one you do. Do you just have the money to spend, or do you max out your credit cards if you go to Disney? Either way, there's the Disney way. And from what I've read and heard, they do customer service up right in Disney. It's in the literal water. Okay. You're not working at Disney unless you understand the mission of this experience is just as important as the rides or the food or the ticket prices or whatever. It's the experience of the customer. So that's the Disney way, and the training, the model, the culture that's cultivated. Same thing with Chick-fil-A. um, I happen to think Chick-fil-A is one of the best customer service models um, in the fast food industry today, and has been for many years. I think almost everyone would agree with that, even if you don't like the food or you don't like the restaurant. And what's really interesting, same thing with Disney. Like, Disney is one location. They can kind of control that Disney way. Chick-fil-A is really interesting because they scale this model out all over the country. So if you walk into one Chick-fil-A in Missoula, Montana, then you go into another Chick-fil-A in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you're going to get a very similar quality and caliber of service at that Chick-fil-A. And it's because of one of the things that they call second mile service. And I'm not going to go into all the definition around that. Basically, they're pulling that from a biblical parable where a man comes and he needs help, and the other man goes a mile to help him, because that's what the man asked for. Hey, can you help me get this mile? And then the other guy says, yeah, but I'm actually going to go 2 miles to help you out. I'm going to go an extra mile. Okay. And that's kind of that extra mile um, kind of concept that you've probably heard before, but this is the second mile service. So we're going to go one more mile to please our customers, to give them this Chick-fil-A customer service experience. Okay. So these two dynamics were kind of sitting in the background as I was thinking about how do I build an excellent sterile processing department of technicians that are not just competent in their job, but create a culture that you can feel, um, you can hear it, you can see it, that anytime anybody, and this could be a new team member, it could be a rep, it could be a surgeon, it could be an administrator, could be a surveyor. Anytime any one of those folks come in from the outside into our department, it's like walking into one of those two groups I just talked about. It's like walking into Disneyland and we don't have the rides. Sorry. Or Chick-fil-A, we don't have the sandwiches. All right, sorry. But you're walking into some place that you feel immediately there's something different here. These folks care about not only getting the job done, but they care about the experience that this visitor is having in their department. Now, some visitors will impact our day-to-day workflow, right? So like if it's a rep visitor and they got trays, that's directly impacting my workflow. Like whatever I'm interfacing with them now, big deal. As other visitors like administrators, if they're just coming to tour, they're kind of rounding, saying hi, they're not necessarily directly impacting the speed at which I'm going to be processing the tray or the quality or whatever, but they're still having an experience, good, bad, or indifferent. And as a leader, I want that experience to be as excellent as humanly possible. I want them looking at our department, especially if they're an administrator. I want them thinking, wow, they got their stuff together in that department. They're going places, they're improving quality, they're working on the little things that make a big difference. I want them walking away out of that thinking that, because when they sit down, or when I sit down with them in a couple of months and I'm defending my budget, or I'm trying to justify my budget as a leader, I want them thinking and knowing and having experienced that our team, our department has our crap together, that we're going places, that we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do as much as we can with as little as we got, so that as they're looking at that budget, they're not seeing a broken culture and a broken team and a broken department. Everyone's stressed out, everyone's angry, everyone's mad. There's no trust, there's no nothing. And they're saying, let me see, do I give more money and resources to this broken place? Or do I give more money and resources to a place that is already attempting to pursue that spirit of excellence? All right. Big intro to elevator etiquette. We're not teaching in general. I don't know if I've ever seen on any competency training, onboarding, anything, any kind of training around elevator etiquette. But let me tell y'all, we are not born with good elevator etiquette, especially folks who they may not have grown up around elevators. I didn't. I mean, I didn't have an elevator in my house. Like, there's some people that live in buildings that have elevators. They use them every single day, or they're going places across town, around town, that they're using elevators every single day, often. Your entire life growing up. There's a lot of us. Like, my whole world was one story, no elevators. Like, I didn't do an elevator in school. I didn't do an elevator at home or getting to home or anything. Like, there's no elevators anywhere in my small town. Now, that's hyperbole. There you go. But that's the reality, is we cannot assume that whoever we're hiring in um, already has this comfort level around elevators. Now, this is baseline, right? Like, yeah, you push the button and you get on, Hank. How hard is that? Okay. That's not really what I'm talking about, not the technical side of how to use an elevator. What I'm talking about, going back to this customer service model, is how do we cultivate in our staff and train them intentionally to be the elevator super users in our facility, so that if you encounter one of my team members either waiting to get on an elevator, in an elevator, coming off an elevator, that experience leaves an impression on you, just like what I was talking about before, that, man, what department do they work in? Because they're communicative, they're happy, they're supportive, even on an elevator. So let me give you some concrete examples about the do's and don'ts, what this kind of looks like. And I'll try to post this link in the comments section on most of these streams. I can't really do that on X. Well, maybe I can. Maybe I can put a reply in X, but I'll try to go around to all the streams when we get done and put the link to this article. It's called Three Keys for Sterile Processing Professionals to Elevate Your Elevator, your, your elevator etiquette. Okay, easy for me to say. Okay. So number one, most basic, don't hover outside of the elevator. I've got to tell my kids this all the time when we're at a hotel or something, and they all want to hit the button. And then what do they want to do? Stand right there by the door, right as it's opening up. And sometimes adults do this, including me. If I'm not paying attention and I'm standing in an elevator, I'm not intentionally thinking about these concepts I'm talking about, it can be really easy to kind of be drawn in close to that elevator door. You hit the button and you're standing right there as the elevator opens. Now, number one, that's not necessarily what you want to see. If you're on the elevator and the door opens, you don't want to see like some random stranger standing right there with their face at the door. Number one. Then right away, you've got to, if you're on the outside, you've got to step back or step on the side or whatever. Now you're immediately, potentially, if there's someone behind you, immediately causing issues outside the elevator, because there's this little timer that starts, this internal timer in the elevator when the doors open. Everybody knows I got to get out and I got to get in, because these elevator doors are going to automatically start shutting, just like on the subway, right? So don't hover outside the door. Hit the button, stand on either side of that door opening. Preferably, if your elevators are kind of in a corner and there's one a specific direction that the majority of folks are going to be coming out, stand on the opposite direction, right? So they're not having to go around you to get out of the elevator and then go to the next stage in their journey. Stand outside of the door right there. That way everybody can get out. Depending on how you're positioned, if you want to stick your hand and hold that door open, I think that's okay. There may be safety concerns around that. I'd be happy to be corrected if there's any elevator repair techs out there that are tuning in that say, Hank, never hold that elevator door like that. Don't do that. That's fine if you want to tell me that. I will receive that advice and I'll pass it along. But otherwise, if you're positioned appropriately that you feel like you can safely hold that door open for everyone exiting, that's a great thing. Okay. So don't hover. What I said in the article is don't be Marty McFly. Don't be hovering around the elevator. Hopefully that can help you to remember that. All right. Um, Number two, don't be that guy or that gal that takes the last spot in the elevator. I know, depending on where we're going, if we got to get there quick, if it's a delivery, if it's a time sensitive or emergent delivery, we got to do what we got to do. We got to take care of the patient. We got to get in. Otherwise, if there's multiple folks standing around, especially if they look like they're patients or families of patients, um, do the right thing and let them get on the elevator before you take the next one. And if there's elevator down, I know the impact of that. Like, it's a hard decision. This could be another 3, 4, 5 minutes of waiting if you don't take that slot, if you give that to someone else. But I'm telling you, in creating and cultivating this this spirit of excellence, of customer service, customer first mentality, this is how you do it. You're not the one that jumps. Even if you beat those other people there, if they look like patients or if they look like family members, those are the ones that should go first. And you should audible that. You should say that to the people who are standing there to say, hey, you look like you're going somewhere important. Why don't you take this slot here and I'll grab the next one? Great experience. Great experience. Okay. Um, Another point, appoint yourself the captain of the elevator. So this is an interesting dynamic. This is going to be easier for all you firstborn out there that just love leading in life in general. You were born to lead, quite literally, in your little family unit. If you're not comfortable getting out front, this could be a little harder. But let me tell you, oftentimes when you get in this elevator environment, it's kind of everyone's kind of looking at each other, thinking like, who do I tell to punch the number for me, or how do I make sure that my number is punched if I can't necessarily see back there? And there's some um, uh, awkward conversations sometimes. Now, like we get it done, right? There's not always someone in the elevator that says, "Hey, where's everybody going?" Okay, 5, 4, 6, great. Okay, great. Everybody got their number pushed, great. But if there is that person, this is that captain model that I'm talking about. If there is that person, everyone on that elevator immediately feels cared for and proactively so. They didn't even have to say, hey, can you hit 2? Can you hit 4? Or whatever. Right when you walk on, take ownership of that elevator as if it's yours, as if you're the elevator. I don't know what they call that person, the elevator guy. Um, but step in, and I don't care if there's already 5 people in the elevator from the lower floor, the upper floor, and like you're the last person on. Step in, and if you can, get close to the buttons and then take a look around before the door completely shuts and say, hey, does anybody else need a floor? Let me know. Great experience. And they're going to say, man, who is that person? They're just killing it on this elevator etiquette. They must have read Hank's article about this. Okay. Um, Another real basic one. This is kind of true in general, even outside the elevator. Anytime you're outside of your department, you really need to remember who you are and who you're representing. This is especially important if you're with a coworker in the elevator and there's other people around that are not in your department, or there's other people around that are patients or their families, the public, basically. Um, what are you talking about? How are you talking about it? Even if you're referencing in code and you're not saying the doctor's name, if you're saying something like, I can't believe that surgeon is complaining about that today. We already told them this, and now here it is with this. Or I can't believe that the sterilizer's down again. Da 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 da. Well, all of that conversation and chatter is just getting into the minds of the patient and their family. They're already stressed and concerned and potentially worried about the procedure because that's just natural. And now they see these two people in scrubs. They don't necessarily know what department you're in, uh, but they see these people and they're either complaining about work or they're lamenting all the things I was just talking about. Maybe they're blaming other people for delays or issues or whatnot. Uh, it, that moment is a patient experience moment, even if that's not the patient in the room, because the first thing that family member is going to do is they're going to go back to their family member and say, "Yeah, I heard like one of their sterilizers are down. Do you even know what that is?" Or, "What's your doctor's name again? Dr. Johnson? I just heard someone talking about Dr. Johnson that they're in a bad mood today. And like these people were in scrubs. I don't know." Right? We don't want that. And we don't have to have that if we're being intentional about how we're stepping on the elevator and who and how what we're representing in that moment. So keep your mouth shut on all the internal drama and everything that's going on. If you got to talk about it, just wait till you get off the elevator back into the apartment or in a private hallway or whatever. Even better, how about you exude kindness in that moment and you welcome them to the hospital. And if you want to make small talk, that's fine. If you just want to talk about the weather or the game, anything to kind of put a smile on their face, but then also remind them that they're seen. Because it's easy if you're an outsider coming to a big hospital setting to feel like I'm just a number. No one even knows I'm here, especially if you're not the patient. It's just like, I'm not like, am I supposed to be here? Where am I supposed to be? Um, am I interrupting anything? Right. But you, you want those people to feel like, yes, they're seen, they're welcomed. It's good that they're here. We want them here. And everybody who's wearing this uniform is, um, they're also wanting to be here. And we're not communicating the opposite. Okay. All right. Um, Two more things just to wrap up this piece, specifically around leaders. It, y'all know you can tell people what to do, but if you don't show them what to do, you undercut everything else that you've just been saying. So, leaders, uh, take this to heart and show your staff what this looks like by example. And if you can tell them in the moment, that's great. If you need to tell them after the elevator ride what you just did and why you did it, that works too. But you need to be modeling this every single time that you can to your staff so that they get a feel for the impact of it. Like, you don't need to do this that often to start seeing the response of your team and the patients and the visitors if you're the one as a leader out there setting that example. All right. And then finally, have fun. Yeah, it's a ride. It's an elevator ride. So that's the Disney aspect, right? We're going on a ride. It's a slow ride, kind of like It's a Small World after all. I think that's like a slow ride there at Disney, but slow ride, just up and down a couple floors. Enjoy it. Your joy or your happiness or just your kindness, you don't have to be laughing or whatever, but your kindness will bleed over into this patient experience, but also into your coworkers' experience. There's likely going to be people that are in the elevator. They're not patients, they're not families, but they don't work in your department. They work somewhere else in the hospital. But let me tell you guys, um, People are going through a lot of stuff these days. There's a lot of mental health challenges going on, and even like there's systemic mental health challenges, but then there's people that are just having a rough day, and they got issues with their card going in. They got issues paying the bills. They got issues with their kids. They got issues with their spouse. They got their own health issues that they're worried about. There's a lot of things that could be going on with that person in the elevator. And everything that I'm talking about today is getting at this culture of excellence, but it's also getting at the human experience in healthcare and our role as sterile processing professionals in impacting it. We hear all the time that we're not a patient care position because we don't interface directly with the patients. And that part is partially true. We don't see a lot of patients in our day to day activities in sterile processing. That's absolutely true. But do you know where we do see them? In the hallways and in the elevators. That's where we're seeing the patients and their families. And if there ever was a time to take all the hard work and all the competency and all the excellence and all the culture that you want to demonstrate to the public at large, we say all the time, we wish more people knew what we did in sterile processing. We wish this was more known and supported at large. Well, the number one place that you're going to interface in those kinds of opportunities, small as they may be, in those kinds of opportunities is in the hallway, in the elevator, and with intentional etiquette, not hovering, owning that elevator ride as the elevator captain, okay, uh, putting others first in getting on the elevator, getting off the elevator. We didn't even mention that, but that's kind of common sense, right? Try to be the last one off if everyone else is getting off on the floor. If not, try to be the second to last one off, just so you're making sure that everybody else gets to where they need to go first. Okay. But this is our opportunity to interface, to display who we are and what we are in sterile processing. It's a small thing. It's specifically leaders here. Listen, hopefully, like I talked probably for, I don't know, half an hour on this elevator thing. One small aspect of living life in a hospital, how you're riding on the elevator. But the same is true again and again and again when it comes to how do you answer the phone? How do you complete your paperwork? How are you communicating with new employees? Uh, How are you interfacing with folks in the cafeteria? On and on and on and on and on. And I just feel like these kinds of soft skills is one example of them, but I think it's even bigger than soft skills. It's just life skills, but these are not taught intentionally in our departments today. But if you start tackling these kinds of things, building them into your daily conversations, your onboarding experiences, even your competencies at some level, I promise you, your team will start seeing that you care about them growing as individuals and you care about your department growing in excellence beyond just how many trays are we processing every day and what's our quality count. Uh, That's important, right? That's why we have our jobs is to process trays and make sure that they're ready on time every time. But there's more to life and there's more to sterile processing than scans and sterilization loads. If you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to be talking to an ortho outsider about all kinds of things related to reps, robotics, data, collaboration, and more. And again, we're going to be broadcasting live all this week, Monday through Friday. So if you're not already following the Beyond Clean channel or pages, please do so. Go subscribe. And until we see you again tomorrow, keep fighting dirty. Peace.